talk a lot about taxpayer dollars. Why? Well, why not? They're important. And you should care about how your tax money is being spent, whether you live in this county or not. So when we found out that the Multnomah County auditor just wrapped up an audit on the budget process, which heavily relies on your taxes, you could say that our ears perked up, and it's our big story tonight. First, let's meet a key player. This is County Auditor Jennifer McWork. She started her second four-year term back in January. County Auditor is an elected position, and her job may sound simple, but, you know, it's not. She's in charge of ensuring that Multnomah County government is efficient, transparent, and accountable to the hundreds of thousands of people who live in the county. Now, there's a lot of money at stake as well. The county budget is $2.8 billion. That includes the county's general fund, which is nearly $750 million. And that's mostly made up of your property and business taxes if you live in Multnomah County. So that's what the commissioners decide and dole out to the different departments and programs each year.
So we looked at how understandable is the budget process and how transparent is it for community members. And we found that in many ways, the county's budget process really does meet best practices. But we would like to see better transparency in how the county reports on its budget. And we would like to see more time for really meaningful community engagement in the budget process. And so our recommendations focused on those two areas.
McWork says one of the reasons that she wanted to make sure this audit was done was because she's heard questions for years from community members who look at county budget sites and then request the documents detailing how some of the money is spent, and they notice the numbers do not always line up. She said there's a reason for that, and it's not mismanagement or anything criminal. It's that the systems the county uses.
When the county budgets, each county office or department submits what they call program offers, which is a budget for a program in their portfolio. And that's how the board adopts the budget, at that really low program offer level. But the county's financial system doesn't work in program offers. It works in cost centers, and program offers and cost centers don't always line up. In a recent year, there were about 600 program offers, and about over 130 of them didn't line up perfectly with the cost center.
Okay, that's confusing enough. Here's a visual to help you better understand the program offer versus cost center idea and how they do not always line up one-to-one. This is a real-life example from the Department of Community Justice. You can see there are 7 program offers in green, but only 5 cost centers, making it really difficult to track the spending of those program offers because they fall into different cost center categories, sometimes multiple cost center categories. Basically, the computer systems don't play nice with each other, which makes it really confusing. That's sort of the crux of the whole audit. County commissioners base their budget decisions on program offer level, but spending on the program offer level is not reported. So, you know, try and track that. It's only reported on the cost center level. So again, not always easy to see how the money is being spent. In fact, the audit says the way things are now, quote, makes it difficult, if not impossible, to meet best practices for financial monitoring. And those best practices, which are outlined by a group called the Government Financial Officers Association, well, they include this sort of obvious bit of guidance that a government should be able to show if it has actually purchased goods and has actually provided services.
I think the issue is the budget system speaks in one language and the finance system speaks in another. And so it's very hard to translate between the two of them if you don't have an office that has one program offer and one cost center. So it's unfortunately more complicated than I think it should be, which is kind of why we're saying, hey, let's report it the same way we're budgeting. So it's not that they aren't spending that money. It's that cost centers look at revenues and expenditures differently than a program offer does.
So yeah, simplifying it would be kind of cool, as we said earlier, but we'll say it again, the auditors did not find any evidence of mismanaged money or fraud.
What we really saw was kind of the challenge that county staff have trying to reconcile these things, and then that it can be opaque for the public, and no one wants that. It needs to be easy for us to understand how our taxpayer dollars are being spent. And so we're calling for at least annual reports to the board at that program offer level of how money has been spent, which I think will give the board a greater opportunity to make good budget decisions and really understand where are we meeting our performance measures, where are we not, how are we using these funds.
That all sounds pretty good. The audit also looked at the various citizen budget advisory committees that are supposed to give input on department budgets, but they found that the timeline of how the budget process is set up makes it super hard for those committees to actually have any input or impact. Right now, the budget process starts in November with a general fund forecast. Then departments start preparing their budget requests and submit them to the county chair in February. Okay, once that happens, the citizen budget advisory committees are supposed to look at those requests and submit a letter to the chair with their feedback, and then the chair is supposed to develop and release a proposed budget. Makes sense? Sure. Lots of thoughtful input and decision making. But in reality, the audit found that those committees rarely get those letters to the chair in time to have an impact on the budget. With this in mind, it's not surprising that CBAC members surveyed by the Office of Community Involvement said they did not believe their input had an impact on the budget, which is correct because it does not. And it's not the first time that we've heard that. Last month, we talked to the leader of the budget committee meant to oversee the request from the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Here's how he summed up the experience.
The county doesn't want to have oversight on the way it's spending money so that it can continue to spend money in a way that doesn't actually address the problems that Portlanders have.
Can that be proved? Yeah, sure can. Auditors made this graph to show the median number of days between those committee letters being sent to the chair and then the chair releasing the proposed budget. In the last 3 fiscal years, so a total of 6 years, those letters, last 3 years actually, those letters were sent less than a week before the proposed budget was released, with that big old goose egg that happened this past spring. So no time to digest what they had to say. The audit suggested switching to a 2-year budget process instead of just 1 year. That biennial budget could mean more time for educating the public about budget options and giving those citizen committees time to actually influence how the tax dollars are spent.
It would help with transparency because as the process currently stands, the fiscal year is only about half done when departments are preparing their program offers. And so if the process were stretched out to 2 years, you'd have like a full year of data to be able to report on as you're adjusting things for the second part of that 2-year cycle.
Again, totally makes sense. So there are 2 big takeaways from the audit. Number 1, the computer systems are speaking different language, and that makes it almost impossible in some cases to report how money is being spent. Number 2, the budget timeline is way too short for meaningful public input, especially from those citizens' budgets committees, which are set up to give input. So what does Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega-Peterson have to say about this? Well, she agrees the computer systems should play nice with each other and that the county is, working on it and has been before the audit. They also plan to create a budget monitoring dashboard to show the actual operating expenses of the departments. As for switching to a 2-year budget, she says the county's chief operating budget and financial officers will, wait for it, potentially create a study to see how switching to a 2-year budget would impact the county. In the meantime, what do you think about all this? Are you surprised by what the audit found or maybe what it did not find? Let us know, will you? You can send us an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. And while we're talking about Multnomah County, let's get to some of your thoughts about solutions for getting people back downtown in Portland. On yesterday's show, we told you about a widely cited study that showed downtown's foot traffic recovery is actually better than initially thought, but, still not great. The city ranks 5th to last among 66 large cities, 2 spots ahead of Seattle. Thank you very much. And more than 24 business leaders in downtown sent a letter to elected leaders demanding more be done to help downtown recover. They sent a list of solutions that we told you about last night, and then we asked for your solutions. And let's just say there certainly was a common theme among your comments.
Pat, it's not rocket science. Downtown is a drug-riddled dump. And until those changes for Measure 110 happen, or we fully repeal Measure 110, and we do away with all the drug addicts and homelessness, then it's going to continue to hamper downtown's usage and growth.
And Linda wrote to us, pretty simple in my book. We need to clean up the homeless drug-using population out of the area so that people feel safe to walk on the sidewalks. Until then, I will only rarely go near downtown. The downturn over the past years is appalling.
I'm a big advocate of downtown. I try to go down and partake of the businesses and go to shows. And I got to say, this last Sunday I was down there and wanted to walk a few bridges and just go on a stroll. And the entire time I was in fear. I was constantly looking over my shoulder. I felt really uncomfortable. It's like walking around in an open air psych ward or a prison yard or something. You never know what's going to come up on you, or somebody passing you, and you see these homeless. I saw people with hammers and machetes. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's not good. And how about this from Ted? Improvement of downtown could be increased if the support for the homeless people could be removed from town center and be available to homeless camps provided by a city in outlying areas. Take away the convenience of in-town support and provide it elsewhere. This county and city must have a vast amount of property that could be used. Now, let's be clear, not all of downtown is a wasteland like many believe it to be. There certainly are vibrant pockets in the central city, and frankly, they don't get much attention because of the problems nearby that dominate the thoughts of so many. But the sentiment from you is clear. The drug and safety problems that plague parts of downtown are the biggest reason why you do not spend your time or money there. Coming up next on The Story, there is snow out on the mountain. Our crews were up on Mount Hood today, and Chief Meteorologist Matt Safino will join us after the break to tell us how much fell and what it means for skiers and snowboarders. We'll also discuss Hurricane Otis down in Mexico, which roared ashore as an incredibly powerful Category 5. Will we feel any effects in our neck of the woods from a storm that strong in the Pacific? Matt knows all, and he will explain when The Story returns. Now to some weather coverage. A big change out there. I'm sure you can feel it even here in the valley, but up on the mountain, yeah, there's snow. We've seen it at government camp, and here's a live look at Timberline Lodge right now. Even though Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino told us the El Nino weather pattern would mean less snow, my goodness, it's off to a good start. Matt joins us now. Is this the beginning of the ski season? And is, not the ski season, but the ski season snowpack. Right. And is it going to stick around, Matt?
Yeah, not the beginning of the ski season. But yes, I believe this is the beginning of our snowpack. And back to the El Nino point, too. One thing that I don't think I mentioned when we talked about El Nino, but I've seen this happen with other El Ninos in the past where our storm season gets off to a rocking start in the fall, October, November, early December, and then it shuts down. So one storm does not an El Nino bust. Just keep that in mind. We've got the whole season ahead of us. But,
a lot of skiers hope it does, though.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see.
That for sure. That is true. But right now, this is great. Off to a really good start. And what I'm noticing here, which I love, is look at the cars here. Look at that windshield there, covered with new snow. So, yes, we had heavy snow overnight last night and this morning, but it's snowing again. The road is covered. So while there was 16 inches of new snow up until this afternoon, we're going to get a few more inches out of this. I don't know if we'll get to 20 inches for the storm total, but 18, 19 is certainly within the realm of possibility. And the reason why is that next band of showers that just came through Portland and Vancouver, dumped everybody with a bunch of rain, that's headed up into the Cascades. So I looked at the top 5 October snowfalls. And this is for government camp, mind you, which is at 4,000 feet, which in October is a relatively low elevation for getting heavy snow, right? Because we were just up at Timberline. That's at 6,000 feet. That 2,000 feet makes a big difference. Yeah. But we are now, if this one holds, and I saw 12 inches at government camp, it's in the top 5 greatest snowfalls we've ever had in the month of October at government camp. So that's good company. That's great to get that much snow this time of the year. So for snowfall in the Cascades in October, not uncommon. Happens in the first half of the month, Pat. I'm like, yeah, it's not going to last. But in the second half of the month, this time of the month, yeah, this is often the beginning, the start of our winter snowpack, and I think this is. We won't keep all 16 inches or whatever we end up getting at Timberline because we've got some dry weather and some sunny weather ahead, so there will be sublimation and there will be some compaction of the snow, but I believe this is the start of our snowpack. And then I dug through the record books for the greatest snowfall in Oregon in one day in October, and I found 32 inches back in 1956 on October 30th at Crater Lake. And keep in mind, that's up at 6,500 feet, so a little bit higher than Timberline Lodge, but still impressive that we had that much snow in the month of October anywhere in Oregon.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now let's switch to the monster hurricane in the East Pacific. Down in Acapulco, I read that winds were something like 165 miles an hour when it made landfall. Is that going to spin off and have any impacts up here in Oregon?
No, that won't impact us here on the West Coast, but some of that moisture may eventually cruise across Mexico and then into the eastern United States. The storm has already fallen apart, but the remnants of tropical systems, as you well know, can oftentimes fuel heavy rainfall well hundreds of miles downstream from where it makes landfall. This is an amazing storm, though, Pat, because 24 hours before it made landfall, it was a tropical storm. I mean, this is what we call rapid intensification of a storm because it made landfall right over Acapulco as a Category 5, winds estimated at 165 miles an hour. We're still getting reports of the damage down there because all the power obviously got knocked out. Look at this satellite loop from the folks at Colorado State University. These are the lightning strikes, and you can see with the daylight hours, the storm just pounding inland. And again, it went inland right over Acapulco, so they got the worst of the winds, the surge, and the rain. Very, very dangerous storm, and it blew up. None of our model guidance picked up on this developing into even a major hurricane, a Category 3, let alone a Category 5. So what does it take? Well, to get the rapid intensification, we don't really understand sometimes why some storms intensify so rapidly, but we do know what it takes to get a hurricane to go and to really make it develop a lot, and these were all in place. Water temperatures above 80 degrees and warm water at depth in the ocean, that was in place. Converging winds, that forces the air upwards. And then aloft, You have the abundant moisture, no dry air, and you don't really want much upper level winds because that'll shear a storm off, or at least have all the winds blowing out of roughly the same direction and not too strong. So yeah, that is a brutal, brutal storm, and really none of the models picked up on it. So yeah, those folks in Mexico were thinking, yeah, okay, tropical storm, maybe a Category 1 hurricane. Next thing you know, they got a Category 5 bearing down on them. It's a really rough deal.
Yeah, brutal. Great description. Thanks, Matt. Always super interesting. Coming up next in the story, our new investigative documentary, Sick Medicine, is available now on our digital platforms. But there's an ongoing legal battle going on between KGW and the Oregon Medical Board. Ashley Korsland will explain when the story returns. The KGW Great Toy Drive is coming soon, and we need organizations to sign up and help collect toys for kids. You can do that by heading to kgw.com/toy to learn more. We want to thank Piccolo Mondo Toys in Northwest Portland for signing up already. Last year we collected 35,000 toys. We'd love to do more this year. Please join us. Head over to kgw.com/toy. Let's get back to our exclusive KGW investigation into doctors who are disciplined for serious misconduct but then allowed to keep practicing medicine. Ashley Korsland researched dozens of cases of doctor misconduct over the last 9 months, but one in particular actually led to an ongoing legal fight between KGW and the Oregon Medical Board. They sued us to prevent the station from getting disciplinary records that involve a doctor who's accused by more than a half dozen women of sexual misconduct.
In 2020, 8 women sued Dr. Christopher Baldwin for sexual battery and medical negligence, court records show. 6 of them were school bus drivers in Beaverton, Oregon. They were required by their employer to undergo physical exams to maintain their commercial driver's licenses. Dr. Baldwin performed those exams. In their lawsuit, the women allege that between 2015 and 2020, Dr. Baldwin peered down their shirts during exams and stared at their breasts without legitimate medical reason. 3 of the women claimed Dr. Baldwin touched their breasts or genital area. Dr. Baldwin didn't respond to our request for an interview, but he did talk about the allegations during a deposition as part of the lawsuit. He denied any sexual misconduct, saying, quote, "I was not breathing heavily, but since she was wearing such a skimpy outfit, some things probably could have been semi-excited." It appears Dr. Baldwin settled the lawsuit confidentially. Then his medical license in Oregon went on inactive status. We discovered that he left the state and received a medical license in Arizona in 2022. Neither the Arizona nor Oregon Medical Board websites reflect evidence of any disciplinary action or the lawsuit. But through our reporting, we learned that before leaving Oregon, Dr. Baldwin was issued a letter of concern by the Oregon Medical Board. We filed a public records request to get a copy of that letter, but the medical board denied us, arguing the letter is confidential. So we appealed to the Oregon Attorney General's office, which agreed the letter of concern is indeed a public record. It ordered the medical board to turn it over. Instead, the Oregon Medical Board sued KGW, asking a state judge to rule the letter of concern should remain private. As of now, that legal fight continues.
Ashley's with me now. So what was the reason for them trying to keep it confidential?
Yeah, so in its court filing, the Oregon Medical Board argued that by putting this information out, releasing it to the public would set a precedent that could expose doctors in the cases where there are unfounded complaints, and also that it might discourage doctors from disclosing particular things in their reports. Now, I do want to make one thing clear. The medical board does have every right to bring this case to court. We, though, felt that these documents should be made public in the name of transparency. And to reiterate, Pat, the Oregon Attorney General sided with us, saying that the public has a right to know about Dr. Baldwin's past, considering the fact that he went and got a medical license in Arizona.
And I know you tried to do an interview with the board. How'd that work out?
Yeah, so we gave the board multiple opportunities to do a formal on-camera interview. The board declined, but it did email us a statement saying that it stands by the way it disciplines doctors and that it has a zero-tolerance culture for sexual misconduct.
All right, interesting. And remind us where we can see the entire documentary.
You bet. So it's available right now on KGW Plus as well as the KGW YouTube page. You can also watch the broadcast premiere of Sick Medicine right here on KGW Friday night at 7 p.m.
All right, looking forward to that. Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks, Pat.
Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. The good stuff is up next. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30. In the meantime, we'll give you a look out the extended window at Timberline and all the snow.